Oh yeah. You're listening to the 70s Kiss podcast. And I'm your host, the Plaster Podcaster, Steve-O from Knoxville, Tennessee. This show is about Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, Ace Frehley, and Peter Criss. If you're looking for something else, you can just keep on knocking. And here we go again. We have Mitch Lafon online. What's up, Mitch?
Not much. Just hanging around, willing and ready to talk Kiss with at any time with anybody.
Right on. And that's one of the reasons I want to interview, because I know that you are a real, what we call a real Kiss fan. You're really
right.
into this, and so let's get into it, man. Tell me what was your very first experience? What hit you? What tagged you the very first time?
The first Kiss memory I have goes back to somewhere around 1977, and I was sitting at the record player, the actual vinyl record players that we used to have back then, and I was staring at a collection of albums by Beethoven and ABBA and all this, and I was going, Jesus Christ, I'm not going to listen to this stuff. And this album with the word Kiss dripping down in blood was sitting there and had been left out. And I was like, what is that? Now, it's my brother who had left it out, and he didn't even own the album. He had borrowed it from a friend. And so I put it on, and I forget what song hit me first. It must have been I Stole Your Love or something, right? And the whole thing just intrigued me. I mean, it was the Love Gun album, and there was the women on the cover, and the whole thing, and just the whole imagery sucked me in, and the music sucked me in. And then I remember after that, not long after, there was the double platinum album and the Kiss Alive 2 albums hanging around the house. And, just all silver embossed, and then the inside cover of Alive 2 with the flames, just all that visual aspect really, really spoke to me. And of course the music, how can you beat Shock Me? How can you beat Hooligan? How can you beat I Stole Your Love? I mean, there's a lot of great music to go with those albums. And of course, after that, we went over to Denmark in 78 or something like that. And on Kiss Alive 2, on that song, they said, what was that song again? All American Man. He says Denmark was great. And just the fact that I was in Denmark and Kiss was saying Denmark, that was it. There was no turning back.
Very little things like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then of course, everything else changed back in '80 when I was 11, and I interviewed Gene for the first time. I mean, here I am, 11 years old in New York City, having come down from Montreal, and I'm sitting across the Demon, but with no makeup and wearing this leather coat, and interviewing about the Unmasked album. And how do you beat that for a childhood memory?
So how did that happen? How did you make that little meeting happen?
I've always been very curious and sort of able to connect and get things done. I had been, again, sitting in front of the record player, looking at the back of the records, because that's what you did back then. You didn't have the internet to preoccupy you. You put on an album and you'd look at the picture, and you'd look at the lyrics, and you'd look at whatever they gave you on the vinyl. And on the back of it, it said management, O-Coin Management, with a number in New York. So I called the operator in New York, and I said, can I have the phone number for this place? And they gave it to me, and I phoned up O-Coin, and I said, hey, I'd like to interview Kiss, please. And they said, sure. Okay. And, at the time, my mom was doing radio work for Denmark's radio, but she was recording it out of the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation in Montreal. And I said, Mom, I got an interview with Kiss. And she says, oh, okay. I said, well, it's in New York. And she goes, uh-huh. And I said, can you drive me down? She said, yeah. And I said, listen, it's got to be legitimate. When we're not going to just do this. And so she spoke to the people at the CBC, and the show ended up airing on Radio Denmark back in whatever August of 1980 or whatever it was. But so her connection to the media and my intuition and entrepreneurship to do stuff and get stuff done worked out that I was sitting in front of Gene Simmons at 11 conducting an interview.
Were you afraid?
No.
So you're ready to go?
Yeah, I've never, that's the one thing. I've just never been intimidated by anybody. I mean, tomorrow I'm interviewing Brian May of Queen, and all these people on my Facebook and everywhere else are going, oh my God. And it's never been an issue for me. Whether it's Gene Simmons or Paul Stanley or Alice Cooper or Rob Halford or any of these people that I've met and interviewed, they're just guys. And from the age of 11, I always sort of just saw them as, now, had Gene Simmons walked out in Ocoee management in 7-inch heels and full makeup, that might have changed the whole thing. But when he came out with just a brown leather jacket and said, "Hey, how are you?" There was nothing demonic or intimidating. It was like your uncle saying, "Hey, kid, how are you?"
So at this time, his makeup hadn't been taken off yet, right?
Nope. It was 3 years before the unmasking.
So you got to actually see Gene Simmons without his makeup before they even done any of that. So that's real cool. And
yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, and the reason I ask you if you were afraid is because not about your thing now, because I understand that, in '89, my very first show as a stagehand was, like I told you on the phone, Badlands and Great White and Tesla. And after about, I don't know, 3 or 4 shows, 4 or 5 shows doing that stuff, being around these people, it's just like second nature, and it ruined the whole mystique, everything. I mean, they're just people, but being a kid, being able to interview Gene Simmons, and the guy walks out and doesn't have his makeup on, and you're sitting there going, well, where's Gene Simmons? Did you feel that at all, or did you know it was him when he walked into the room?
No, I know it was him because the secretary had said to us, Gene will be out in a minute, and he came out, and so there was no, the only thing I remember was oh, he's not wearing makeup, but nothing else really. I mean, if you go to YouTube and you type in Mitch Lafon, Gene Simmons interview or whatever from 1980, you can listen to me, and you don't hear nervousness. You don't hear my voice cracking. I mean, you hear my voice before puberty, but that's what are you going to do about that? But no, it was just Gene, and I had my questions in my head, and I was good to go. And much like I do now, I didn't write down my questions that I was going to ask them. They just came to me naturally.
I was listening to the story here about how your first experience. Am I right in saying that your parents actually turned you on to rock and roll, or who was the people your cousins, or how did you find these albums?
I'm going to have to give the credit to my brother on that one. My parents played no music in the house. My dad had zero interest in any kind of music, whether it was big band or Kiss or anything, just nothing going on. And my mom had no music going on either, but my brother would borrow these records from friends of his, and I would borrow the borrowed records. While nobody was in the house, I would just put on the records that were lying around, and Kiss is what was lying around.
So your parents were okay with Kiss at that time? Because I know that a lot of, especially mine, they weren't into the fact that their children were listening to a demon. And, that was a big deal, at that time. It sounds like your mother was impressed that you got an interview with Gene Simmons.
Yeah, she's always been very, what's the word I'm looking for here? Easygoing. She didn't really care. I mean, growing up, if we wanted to go out and stay out till 3 a.m, she didn't care as long as we either called in or came home. And I think by giving us that freedom, it taught us a lot of stuff. My dad, he didn't like us listening to Kiss, but not because he thought they were devils or demons. He just didn't like loud music. I mean, he just didn't play music for himself. So had I been playing, John Travolta loud or the Bee Gees loud, he would have hated that just as much, right?
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I would have too. John Travolta and the Bee Gees and all that was real big at that time. Like I was telling somebody on the last podcast that I can remember the girl that sat next to me at school in 6th grade. She would come every once in a while, and she was this huge Bee Gees fan, and the disco, the whole thing, Saturday Night Fever, and she would wear this Kiss Sucks shirt to school. And it was a big deal back then, the head-to-head, what band was better, Rush or Kiss, But, okay, well, let's get into what it inspired you to do. So, tell us a little bit about what you do now as an adult that Kiss inspired you to do.
Boy, that's a good question. There's a lot of things that Kiss inspires me to do. Their message has always been, don't give up, believe in yourself, do your own thing, and of course that's what I do. But more in terms of livelihood and job-wise, I mean, I do the whole rock journalist thing, and I go out and I interview all these rock stars and stuff. And I think Kiss gave me that desire to be in music, and I tried to play an instrument, and I just can't. And so I figured I had to do something, because their message was don't give up, And so I decided to do this kind of music where I write about it. And that comes a lot from that first experience with Gene and stuff. I mean, had he been a complete ass and made that whole experience miserable, you know how it is when you're a kid and an experience is miserable. You're bad at baseball. Well, you never want to play baseball again, kind of thing. And the fact that it was such a great experience, I think, helped keep me going and keep me doing it.
Yeah, that is cool because my first experience with Paul Stanley wasn't that cool. The first question that came out of my mouth was about Ace Frehley, and he didn't like it. So he just kind of blew me off. But so that's cool. So the first time I saw you was a podcast called Three Sides of a Coin. And
right.
As I was telling you on the phone, the reason that I had found that is I had been reading Ace and Peter's book and kind of rediscovering my roots, which is the 70s Kiss. And I would read things in the book that I didn't know and read things that I did know. And then I would go on YouTube, since we got a massive amount of videos out there from that era now. I've just seen a crazy concert the other night from New Jersey, I believe is what it was. I've never seen before. It was real cool. But I would look on there and see if I can match something up with the book, what they were talking about at the time in the books. And during those searches, I found Three Sides of a Coin. And I was like, let's check this out. So I started listening, and I would do this around 10 o'clock at night, and then I would end the night just kind of sitting there and put my headphones on, click on the phone, and just listen to you guys go at it with Kiss News or just
rattle on, right?
Yeah. Some of the stuff I agree with, some of the stuff I didn't agree with, but it didn't matter. It was just, it caught my attention, and some of the interviews, I think the very first interview I saw was Peter Criss's drum tech, maybe?
Yeah, Eddie Cannon.
Okay, yeah. So that caught my attention, and, I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. So, I'll check it out. And then I liked your Facebook page and went on there, and every once in a while I would comment. I was one of the people that, that's a 70s Kiss fan, but not really posting anything too far out there, but like some of the others. But, I found the podcast very interesting. So tell us a little bit about that and how it got started.
How the podcast got started?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Michael, who's another host, and I we're doing a podcast called Dropping the Needle, and regardless of what the topic was, because it was a general music discussion podcast, we'd always somehow end up in a conversation about how Kiss made the world better. In this, we'd say, well, when the CD was invented, and then right away our stories would be, yes, well, of course, when Kiss went on CD the first time. So everything kept revolving around Kiss, and we made it a point to stop talking about Kiss on that podcast. And we would joke, well, we need to make our own podcast. And I guess at the same time, Tommy and Michael might have been talking about, hey, wouldn't it be cool to have a podcast? And so all those universes came together, and we ended up doing 3 sides. And, up until I left, it was a wonderful podcast. I mean, the fans that supported us were absolutely brilliant. I mean, the fact that anybody would care that 3 dudes are talking about Kiss, it still amazes me.
Well, it was interesting,
Yeah, we tried to bring something to it that other Kiss podcasts didn't do. First of all, we didn't really spend much time talking about which album is better. We didn't do, Love Gun versus Rock and Roll Over, or here's our Elder episode. And it's not that those aren't valid topics. It's just that every other podcast had done them, so there was no point in doing them. And then, you look at Michael's experience as a Kiss webmaster for 10 years, and you look at my experience doing all the rock shows I've done and all the interviews I've done. We brought something, and I don't want to put anybody else down, but I think we brought something a little more mature to the discussion than, dude, The Elder is a great album, man. Like, we had a different angle on it based on our experiences, and Tommy balanced it out, because here's a guy who worked for Kiss with Michael, and here's a guy who does the rock journalism stuff. But then you've got a guy who just, he sells homes in Minnesota, and he's your average all-American kind of dude, and it just made that sort of all the world came together and just made for a great conversation about Kiss,
Right, and I got it after a while. I guess my main interest in listening to you guys wasn't really. I didn't know that Michael was a webmaster for Kiss Online. I didn't know anything about you and what you did until later on. When you guys would bring it up and talk about it, or I would search on my phone and something would pop up. Trying to catch the next podcast. But I was just listening to see if anything would come up that I never heard before, or. Because when I saw the very first one with the first one that I saw with the drummer, the drum tech, I was just like, wow, that's pretty interesting. And he's telling us, another angle of behind the scenes, and those are the things that people don't get to see or get to hear, and it's just like. Before you talked to me today on the phone, you had, Eric Singer is one of your good friends, but you had no idea that I was a stagehand at one time. And the very first tour in Badlands, I go up on the stage and tear Eric's drums down as a joke because that they were throwing on him with silly putty and stuff. And people don't know about that stuff. And then I would tell my friends, they'd say, yeah, I saw a concert. And I said, well, you remember the guy that, was tearing the drums down? Yeah, I remember. That was crazy. I was like, that was me.
That's funny.
But people love to hear, about stuff like that. They want to know what was going on. And
I think we delivered on that. I think we gave people a lot of stuff that they didn't know. I mean, somebody on our Facebook posted out of the blue, "Where's Drago?" And, we went and found Alan Tucker and said, here he is. Here's Drago. Enjoy. And we got to hear Ed Cannon talk about how he jumped on stage at that show in, I think it was 97, and got to be Peter Criss for a night. I mean, those are really compelling stories.
Yeah, yeah. And, it kind of inspired me to, throw together a little thing myself, which, this one is a little bit more about the fans. And, you're a fan, I'm a fan. And I might talk to somebody, that's a little bit bigger into the Kiss thing later or whatever. Talk to a couple of people already. But it's more about interviewing the fans and what their experience was during that time, if they were alive in the 70s. Because to me, I think that there is histories almost being erased to a new generation of Kiss fans because of, the problems and stuff that's going on. So I decided to go ahead and do this, and to give 70s Kiss fans a voice. I don't care to talk about Eric Carr and all these other people, but I looked online and I said, well, there's no podcasts that are dedicated to 70s Kiss. They're all just about the full thing, So hey, I might as well do it too. So I just jumped into it and just kind of, you guys inspired me to do that. So,
well, I'm glad we could inspire you, by the way, because there's been a couple of people that have mentioned that, and that just goes to show how crazy the whole thing is. I mean, not only did we just think we'd have 50 people watching us maybe once in a while, and it grew much beyond that. The fact that people actually said, that got me off my butt to do my own, you go, wow, that is a kind of a power and a kind of a trippy thing out of it. You go, that's kind of cool, man, because,
And I thought, maybe I could bring a different angle to it, because as you can see already, you're being interviewed. This is really more about you. And
right.
and it's a little different than you guys just sitting around giving your opinions, and you kind of did that too. You did some interviews too, and the Eddie Trunk interview was awesome, but I could tell
Eddie was great.
I could tell that that your opinion, the Three Sides opinion and Eddie Trunk's opinion were two different opinions, and that was cool because everybody has their own opinion. I happen to share Eddie's opinion in many ways. But one of the things that I saw on Three Sides amongst the fans, you do have a lot of people rolling in, but they're constantly bickering back and forth, whether it's over Vinnie Vincent or over Ace and Peter or whatever. And I understand,
that is true.
And I understand that you have to have. I mean, drama sells. People love drama. If everything was perfect, it probably wouldn't be as good as it is.
Well, it's true that if people just agree with everything you say wholeheartedly, it limits the amount of engagement you're going to have, because you're going to say, I love the Elder, and the guy will go, yeah, right, me too. And that's the end of it, right? But if you say, I hate the Elder, and the guy writes back and says, but I love it, and here's why, well, then somebody can write back and say, yeah, but your why don't make sense to me, and here's the other whys, and here are the whys I don't like it, and that creates engagement. So, no, it was great to have everybody voice their opinion. And you know what? As far as Vinnie Vincent, I don't hate the guy as a person. I've never met the guy as a person. My main point, and which is what I have a hard time with some of the fans, is I just don't feel he fit in Kiss. I just like Randy Rhoads wouldn't fit in Kiss, or Neil Peart wouldn't fit in Kiss, or Zakk Wylde wouldn't fit in Kiss. But boy, the Vinnie fans love that son of a gun, don't they?
Well, a lot of people are big Lick It Up fans, and he had a lot to do with some of that music. Although in the studio, Gina Paul's going to have the final say, and they're going to dumb it down. It doesn't matter what Vinnie Vincent would have brought to the table, and which is probably one of their problems. Vinnie was a monster guitar player, and he probably wanted to take Kiss to the next level, and Paul and Gene wasn't ready for that. And so they kept cutting him back, saying, no, we want this, we want it to go like this. And plus, that's what a producer does anyway. A producer's going to sit there and is going to cut it up, everything you record, and say, you know what, that sounds good, but it needs to go like this so we can sell albums. But
yeah, but let's not forget that on some of the songs on Lick It Up, they had to bring in Rick Derringer to replace Vinnie. They just didn't like what he was doing. And another part of being in Kiss, or being in any band, or on any football team or hockey team, is you got to be a team player. And when the band says you've got a guitar solo spot that's going to last 4 to 5 minutes, and you're out there doing 13 minutes cutting off your lead singer, you're not helping the band. You're not saving the band. You're hurting the band.
Yeah, so, I thought his guitar solo was a little weird. I mean, it was too long, and it was just kind of weird, It was more noise than licks,
It really was. And Kiss have gone on the record in the last, you're looking at, 31 years now, or 30 some years since those days. They've done interviews over the last 30 years where they'd say, Vinnie, you don't have that long. Tone it down. Hit your cue. On this thing, Paul comes in and says, Vinnie Vincent on guitar, and we move on. And you're doing the bowstring, and you're doing all kinds of stuff. And it's like, no, just stick to the program. So people say Vinny saved Kiss, but when you don't play by the rules, you hurt a team, right? I mean, if you're a goalie or if your baseball pitcher is not doing what the coach wants, you're not helping the team in the long run. You're hurting them.
Yeah, you're right, and you just brought up a very interesting thing there. Vinny didn't save Kiss. I mean, I shouldn't really have to say this, but you do know what saved Kiss, right?
Well, I have a very strong opinion of what saved Kiss, and I think what saved Kiss was, and I've said this before, and you may not agree, but I think it was that Quiet Riot album going to number one, because back in '83, Ozzy was making noise, Sabbath with Dio was making noise, here came Def Leppard, here came Quiet Riot. That album hit number one, and every record executive said, we need a hard rock album. And they started looking around, and somebody said, hey, Kiss is sitting in the gutter, let's scoop them up. And had it not been for those bands starting to get MTV attention and radio play, Kiss would have just fallen by the wayside. Had the 1980s not been hair metal time, and had it been, the Congo or classic music time, Kiss would have fallen by the wayside. That Quiet Riot album hitting number one that made record companies go sign whatever has a fast guitar in it.
Well, it definitely gave him a boost, because during that time I was just branching out. I'm a guitarist, and I was playing in a metal band called Damage, and and we were doing the whole same thing. But see, the thing about it is, Kiss, it did give Kiss a boost. Okay, it didn't give the original Kiss a boost. It gave the new Kiss a boost. And
sure.
They kind of were looked at as has-beens. All these new guys that were coming in, like Rat and Poison and all these bands like that were just taking over, man. And to me, I don't think really Kiss got to their level during that time. Lick It Up was a pretty big thing that happened at that time. And for some reason, what I remember during that time being big was Heaven's on Fire. I think, in my opinion, I think that was a bigger song.
Yeah, I think it was, just because, first of all, as you got into '84, more of those other acts were starting to get really established. The younger crowd was really starting to get tuned in, and Lick It Up with All Hell's Breaking Loose were okay, and they had sort of set Kiss on the path. But I think Heaven's on Fire was that one single that just everything came together at the same time. The fan base was there, MTV was there, the touring of Europe and stuff, and and touring with Accept and all that had really brought Kiss into the attention again and taken off the makeup. So yeah, Heaven on Fire is a great song. Yeah,
so I agree with you completely. If it hadn't been for Quiet Riot, that whole era probably wouldn't have happened. I'm not talking about not just Kiss, all of them. So
if Randy Rhoads had not joined Ozzy, if Quiet Riot had not gone to number one, if Def Leppard had not hit with Pyromania, that whole scene would not have happened. And within that scene, Kiss, Bon Jovi, Poison, they all would have not happened. And so that has nothing to do with Vinnie Vincent,
Yeah.
It has to do with right place, right time.
Yeah, there was a lot happening at that time, and I know Kelly Rhodes, a good friend of mine, Randy's brother, and I have to agree. There was a lot of things that went into it at that time, but I don't think, even though Quiet Riot hit like they did, and it did boost it for everybody, I just don't think Kiss was as big in that time era than they were in the 70s. And when
they weren't.
And when you guys were talking about, Vinnie Vincent saving Kiss, I have to agree. It's the first time, actually, Mitch, that I heard you talking about the Quiet Riot thing. I totally agree with that. But it wasn't just Kiss. But in my opinion, what saved Kiss was 1996 MTV when they did the reunion thing. That's what saved Kiss. You're seeing results from it today. You're seeing football teams. Gene Simmons had his own show. I mean, there's all kinds of things that came from that because of the money, But
well, I agree and disagree. If 1983 and that whole era hadn't hit, Kiss would not have made it to the 90s.
mm-hmm.
That said, Kiss wouldn't have gotten out of the 90s had it not been for the reunion tour.
Right.
But that was true up until about Sonic Boom, and then after that, after the farewell tour, they really didn't do anything. They did a tour in 2003 and then a bit of 2004, and then they sort of stopped until about 2009. And so this is the fourth time out of the box. The original 70s band did what they had to do, and then it sort of died a slow, quiet death around Unmasked and The Elder. Then it got relaunched with the Quiet Riot stuff and Vinny and Lick It Up and all stuff. And then it died again by the time Nirvana hit, and then it got saved by the reunion tour, and that lasted a good 10-year effect. But Kiss wouldn't be here in 2004 without Ace and Peter in 70. Wouldn't be here without that whole 80s thing. Wouldn't be here without the reunion. So they've died and been resurrected for many different reasons. But you're absolutely right about 96. I mean, had that reunion tour not happened then, Kiss right now, if they still existed, would be a club band, much like a Warrant. Much like,
Yeah, I don't think Gene Simmons would have his own reality show. None of that. I mean, I think a lot of opportunities came from 1996 because, as you know, it was the biggest selling show on the road.
Right.
And when that happens, you have every media outlet in the world, tagging on your string. And
but it wore out its welcome. By the time the farewell tour came around, I mean, they had gone from buildings being at about 100% capacity down to the Psycho Circus where buildings were, if you look at the averages, around 75%. Mm-hmm. And the territories shrunk. They went from, reunion tour all around the world, Japan, Australia, Canada, whatever, to the Psycho Circus tour doing basically Canada, U.S. with some Asian tour, to the farewell tour being basically just Canada, U.S. So it was dying a slow, painful death. And by the time they got to 2003 with Tommy and Peter in the band, they didn't even do Canadian dates. That Aerosmith tour only did U.S. shows pretty much.
Yeah, they were just stretching it out as far as they could. And, the Kiss roundtable with whoever the management is, whatever, they probably even broadcasted that to each other, forecasted that to each other. When it happened, they probably knew it was going to happen. But what I'm saying is during the initial, when they come on the ship and did the broadcast, out to everybody, hey, we're going to do a tour and this whole thing, what I'm saying is at that moment, at that time, at that point of the whole game, there was some money rolling around in the bank.
There was.
And these guys, they're businessmen. They're capitalizing on all the things that they're doing, and so like I'm saying, it's showing now. They petered out along the way. I think that they probably knew that was going to happen. So. Yeah. So then you have the reality shows come in, as soon as Ozzy Osbourne did that. And what I was saying a while ago about the 96 thing in the media, when that happened, all the media people were climbing up Gene Simmons' leg going, hey, what can we do for you? Because they all wanted this story. And then as well as I do, is you meet one person, then you meet the next person, you start networking, opportunity knocks. And Gene Simmons is all about that. And I just think that a lot of things happen for them now, out of that 1996 reunion.
Yeah, but that effect, it did have a definite bounce. I don't think without the reunion tour Kiss would have lasted, but that bounce also stopped. I think we're now into it's become mostly dads like me who want to bring their kids. I think we're into a whole new phase that the reunion tour, I think the reunion tour effect is over, basically.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, it's been over for a long time. Okay, well, Mitch, let's get into something else here. So we were talking about three sides a while ago. So do you know, I was looking on this site, you know, and I kind of got left hanging there for a bit because I didn't know what was going on. All of a sudden you disappear, and the other two guys, you know, they come on and they did their video and said their piece or whatever.
Right. Which I haven't watched, by the way.
You haven't watched? Is that what you said?
No, I haven't. I
Oh.
didn't watch that episode where they said Mitch is gone or whatever they said.
Yeah. Well, I didn't see anything. I mean, it wasn't anything disrespectful or anything. I think I didn't really watch all of it. I just watched enough to know that you were gone. And
the good thing about the fans is that I didn't have to watch it, because the minute it went on Spreaker on the Monday night, I got about 100 emails saying, "Oh, they didn't say anything bad about you." So,
yeah,
you know, so
well, I saw all of that. That's what I was getting to. Saw all the fans' reaction and you need to hang out or whatever. All the stuff that we're saying. So
there was a lot of fan reaction. I have to admit, the fact that I became a subject of discussion on the KISS FAQ, the fact that my Facebook page added about 600 friend requests, the fact that I was answering somewhere around 300 emails a day, or, you know, messages via Twitter or Facebook or email, was quite remarkable, actually.
yeah,
And some of the people who wrote me and asked me why I left happened to be in actual bands, you know, that are touring out there. And I'm not going to say which names, but, you know, actual rock stars from actual bands wrote me and said, "Hey, why'd you leave Three Sides?" I'm like, really? People on bands that are touring right now and playing arenas are writing me asking why I quit Three?
Hey, that is cool. That is cool.
Well, it was very cool.
Yeah, go into it and tell everybody your perspective of why you did what you did, and go ahead and go into what you're getting ready to do.
Yeah, you know, it's not a long story, quite frankly. The bottom line was, you know, Michael and Tommy had a vision for what the show was going to be in the future, and their idea was that it was going to be more just the three of us just talking about KISS, and that maybe once a month or even less we would have a guest on. And I was the complete opposite. I was preferring to have, you know, 3 guests a month on and maybe one show where we just talk, and I just thought that fans would find it a lot more interesting to hear the stories of guys that were there and, you know, had some kind of stake in the whole thing, you know, listening to Eddie Cannon or listening to Kevin Valentine, who was on the Psycho Circus album, or Alan Tucker, who was the Where's Drago, or all these people. I just thought that was a lot more interesting. And, you know, we didn't agree. We simply didn't agree, and I just thought, you know what? We just recorded that final show, and it was about what did the Hot in the Shade album mean to us, and so on and so forth. And I just thought, wow, that's I can't just do this anymore. I can't turn down, you know, and at the same time that I was turning, we had like 4 or 5 or 6 people that had wanted to talk to us, and we kept saying no, no, no. And I'm saying, you know, why are we turning down these people who were there so that we can just talk about Hot in the Shade? The whole thing didn't make sense to me as a KISS fan.
Right. And
you know, I want to hear those stories, and I'm thinking, well, I can't hear those stories because they don't. And so, you know, listen, like a lot of bands that break up, it's creative differences, and that doesn't mean I hate Tommy, and that doesn't mean I hate Michael. It just means that in terms of doing a show, they weren't doing the show that I would want to listen to, and they didn't, and therefore it's not the show that I wanted to be part of. And, you know, also it was taking up a lot of time to record those shows, which sometimes went out for an hour, hour and a half. It sometimes took us 3 or 4 hours to record them because the Skype connection wouldn't work, or something would bugaboo, or, you know, and so I was giving up a lot of my Tuesday to do this show, which brought in absolutely no revenue. I mean, there was no money from it. It was done for the love. I mean, it was basically a hobby. And so it's now a hobby that I'm not enjoying. And so, like, when you're collecting stamps or you're collecting coins, and at some point your stamp book's all filled up, and you're like, you know what? I don't really need that new U.S. Bill Cosby stamp or what. You go, okay, it's time to move on. And so it was time to move on.
The Jimi Hendrix stamp that just came out is pretty cool, though.
Yeah, and in Canada, we just had the Rush stamps,
Oh.
And yeah, they're nice because it's a whole booklet with like 10 different stamps. Anyway, but and so you add the fact that it was no longer talking about Kiss in a way that I found interesting to talk about Kiss. There was no money to be made from it, and I wanted to go back to doing interviews. And so after I quit, I lined up interviews with the guys from Accept. I've got Brian May from Queen. I'm in talks. I talked to Roger Daltrey of The Who, and I've got all these other interviews coming up and opportunities coming up. And so I figured, okay, well, let me just go back to doing these one-on-one interviews, and I'll send them out to the media outlets that pick them up. Generally, it's bravewords.com. And, I'll do that, and I'm happy doing that.
And it's not one subject. It's multiple artists.
Yeah, it's multiple artists, and since I've left, I've actually been offered the possibility to host 2 different TV shows. Now, offers and reality are far from being the same thing, but at least I appreciate those offers. And a couple of people have, a couple of podcasts have offered to set up a Mitch Lafon podcast and this and that. So I'm going to look at doing that stuff too. I mean, that's interesting, and I can talk about Kiss, and I can talk about Cheap Trick, and I can talk about what's happening with whatever Avenged Sevenfold or whoever. So there's a lot of different possibilities, and that makes more sense to me. And I like sitting down and doing a 15-minute interview with somebody, and getting in the facts and posting it up there and just moving on.
Yeah. So tell me what is the website? Do you have anything set up yet, or because I've seen you on Spreaker, but there was nothing on there. So are you going to have your own site, or are you going to do a Spreaker site? Or?
Well, it really all depends on the conversations I have in the next couple of weeks and stuff. But right now, whatever I do, if you go to my Facebook.com/Mitch Lafon, everything I do goes there. Whether it's something I write or something I've taken a picture of or something or somebody I've interviewed, eventually it ends up on my Facebook. So that's the sort of the starting point for anything. If people want to go, and I'll take any friend request. I mean, my Facebook years ago stopped being a Mitch Lafon private page and became an unofficial rock news Kiss website.
Yeah.
So that's fine. And, the interviews, I used to do all these interviews, and it would go out on different media outlets, but I've decided that I want to take control of my interviews. So I have my own YouTube page now, and I put the completely unedited audio of all my interviews up on YouTube, so people can, you can go and read the story that I wrote, but if you really want to hear the guy, go to my YouTube page. You can find that by either Googling me or, because I think it's called Angel of Ace, YouTube Angel of Ace. Because I set that up like 5 years ago before Mitch Lafon had any kind of name, right? And so if you follow me on Twitter and Facebook, whatever I'm going to do now and in the future is going to be there. And a lot of the stuff that I write or the interviews in audio form will also, I send them over to bravewords.com. Listen, I don't write for BraveWords. I don't work for BraveWords, but I freelance, and they pick up a lot of the stuff that I do because I think they consider it to be good content,
Yeah, I've read some of it. It's good.
Yeah, and I like doing the audio interviews too. I like that. And then if you do them well, I think people like to sit in and listen because you get to hear nuances and expressions and the way the artist is talking much better than reading it on text. And so, anyway, the goal now is to find somebody, or in fact, one of the offers that I got was that this podcast place that has a whole network and whatever, we're going to pick up my audio and chop it up into a show form, like the Mitch Lafon show, and here's the question and answer, and then some discussion, and so on and so forth. So we'll see. A lot of opportunities out there, but also a lot of fun. And I also get to enjoy my kids now. I don't have to waste my whole Tuesday.
And the fans that you've picked up from Three Sides, they'll have a place to come check you out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so strange to sit here and think that I have fans, but from what I read and from what some people wrote me, there generally seems to be some really great fans out there. I mean, a lot of people said that Three Sides is not going to be the same without me, and that the show is going to have lost something, and who knows? I mean, I'm not going to wish that Three Sides has lost anything, but it's certainly interesting to me that fans think that. It's certainly humbling or nice to know that they thought what I did was good enough that it was appreciated,
Yeah. So there you go, folks. Mitch Lafon, a voice from Canada and a voice from Tennessee. Hope that you were able to understand what we were saying.
That's right. And I love Tennessee, by the way. That's a great place.
Oh, you've been to Tennessee?
Well, actually, no, I haven't been to Tennessee, but everybody I know that's out in Tennessee has always been really nice. And a lot of the podcast people, including Decibel Geek and stuff, they all live in Tennessee. And every time there's anything that has to do with Tennessee, it's always been a positive experience. So I'm just judging or basing it on that every person I've spoken to and every time I've had any dealings with Tennessee, it's been a great experience, so it's got to be a great place.
Yeah, Tennessee's a great place, and there you go. All you people in Tennessee, pick up on Mitch Lafon's new site coming up and everything. And
join me on my Facebook.
On Facebook, and pretty soon you'll have some URLs to throw around, so I'm sure we'll be able to hear that on YouTube and stuff. But hey, Mitch, I really appreciate you taking the time out to do this.
Yeah, anytime. I'm always accessible, and it's always my pleasure to talk Kiss. I mean, what else are you going to do in life?
So that's a wrap. Well, that's it, folks. Until next time, this is the Plaster Podcaster saying, I'm out.